Good afternoon. Welcome to APA's 13th Town Hall on COVID-19. My name is Billy Zidek, APA Standards and Codes Administrator. Allow me to review a couple of housekeeping items before we start. All attendees are in listen-only mode. We ask that you utilize the chat box for the Q&A segment of this session. While we attempt to respond to all questions submitted, should we run out of time, responses will be posted to APA's COVID-19 FAQ, Recently Asked Questions webpage. We also remind participants to ensure their speaker volume levels are set for your comfort. Our speakers are gathering us from across the continent, and as such, varying volumes will be present. Today's sessions will award professional continuing education credits as well as ISDs and AIA CLUs. For AIA certificates, please email me at billie, B-I-L-L-I-E, @apa.org, along with your AIA membership number if you have not done so previously. Our webinar recording will be posted to the APA website later this afternoon. Additionally, you will receive a follow-up email within 72 hours providing a designated link to all webinar recordings, presentation slides, as well as information on upcoming webinars and town halls. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Lander Medlin, APA's Executive Vice President, your moderator for today. Lander, take it away.
Thank you, Billy. And welcome all attendees. We appreciate your engagement in these town hall meetings as we further explore the impact of COVID-19 on our facilities organization and the education enterprise. Our town halls occur every Friday at this time with a different target and focus. Hint, next week's is on transportation. This town hall is a tribute to Juneteenth, the day of liberation, freedom for our Black community brethren. Now we have the opportunity to make it so. As always, thank you for joining the dialogue. Please post your questions at any time. That's what makes this a rich conversation and the special community we share. As institutions determine their path to a fall reopening, facilities are a critical part of the planning and preparations. That's why we chose this topic today, the next in our series, Institutional Duos, the road to reopening with your senior leadership. These three institutional duos will spend 30 minutes each speaking about their planning, strategies, process, and communication approaches for implementation and execution. So the format is a bit different for today's town hall. I'll provide a brief introduction to set this week's context, and then introduce each institutional duo who will provide their framing remarks. We will engage in a short Q&A with them, move to the next duo, do the same, then address our final duo. I'll include or conclude with a document upload reminder, call for images, available resources, save the date, and closing remarks. With respect to the coronavirus statistics, we are basically adding 200,000 cases and 4,000 deaths every week. And that's not slowing down. Given the latest states reopening, 22 states counts increasing, and the impact of the mass gathering protests. Testing and contact tracing capabilities are gaining ground. None of that negates the importance of and criticality for social, physical distancing and face coverings or masks. As for the economy, we did increase retail sales by 18%. But we added another 1.5 million Americans who filed new claims for unemployment insurance. Need I say more? As this weighs heavily on higher education's enrollment prospects and financial viability. Higher education is proceeding with behavior pledges, empty stadiums, widespread testing, and face coverings and masks. 2/3 are still committed to in-person reopening. There remains much preparation from every entity on campus, especially facilities. Hence, our institutional duos will share their reopening plans and strategies. The road to reopening takes leadership and collaboration, no matter the chosen path. So let's start with our first institutional duo. Dr. Randy Weber, Interim Executive Vice President of Finance and Administrative Services, Johnson County Community College. Randy serves as Johnson County Community College's Incident Response Team Lead. He was formerly their Vice President of Student Success and Engagement and served as a Chief Student Affairs Officer in 3 different community college settings. As a first-generation community college graduate himself, Dr. Weber places high importance on the commitment to both student access and completion and overall student success. Randy has presented on enrollment services and academic advising strategies at the national level. And our second contributor of this duo, Tom Hall, is Associate Vice President of Campus Services and Facility Planning at Johnson County Community College. Tom is a seasoned facilities professional who has spent over 40 years both working in and managing facilities and construction in higher education and healthcare. Mr. Hall started working at Johnson County Community College in December of 2019 as the Associate Vice President of Campus Services and Facility Planning. Prior to working for Johnson County Community College, Mr. Hall spent 12 years with the Los Angeles Community College District, where he served as the Chief Facilities Executive for the district. Mr. Hall holds a Bachelor of Science from both Iowa State University in DeVry and an MBA, an Educational Specialist in Higher Education from the University of Central Missouri. Randy and Tom, let's hear your strategy.
Well, thank you, Lander. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and attendees today. I think what you're going to hear as you hear 3 different duos is the complete differences in institutional type and the types of things that had to go into our stories and considerations. What we'd like to do today probably is for me to go ahead and talk a little bit about our experience and our plan, and then Tom will talk about the works of his talented team and being able to execute that from a facility standpoint. Much like many of our institutions, JCCC quickly found out that we would be moving online. We have an incident response team, which is very nimble and includes our emergency preparedness manager, business continuity, communications, in order to respond to the COVID virus. And so our first heavy lift was making the determination that we'd be removing remotely. From a facility standpoint, that was by and large pretty easy, and Tom can talk about the details of that. But our facility, our plan was to move everything remotely, and that was very heavily reliant on technology, communication strategies, compliance with both federal and state laws, along with our institutional policies. One of the things that we found, like many institutions did, we had to change a lot of our institutional policies to impact student withdrawal from courses, to align with financial aid procedures. So we spent the latter part of our spring semester really working to make sure that our students were best served in completing their spring courses. Then our transition was to determine what does a completion of those courses look like for students who were unable to move remotely, as well as how do we begin a transition to return to campus whenever that might be. I'm going to speak first to the academic strategy and then kind of move to the student support service strategy, and then Tom will jump in and talk about facilities. From an academic strategy, as I said, we moved as many courses as we could to online to complete within our regular academic calendar. However, as a community college, we have a lot of career and technical programs that are very heavily reliant on hands-on training that cannot be done remotely. So we then developed a spring teach-out process. And so our spring teach-out process has begun and is at the very beginning stages now, and will pick up mostly in July. We are having no face-to-face classes on our regular curriculum during the summer. But one of our unique attributes is for both credit and non-credit, we provide a lot of the essential training and testing for what was identified by our state early on as essential function framework. And so we did allow, as early as May, activity to occur on campus, on site for these trainings, these testing, so these workforce could get out there. Examples of it are EMS training because they needed more healthcare professionals. We host the National Academy for Railroad Science, and so they needed to get a lot of their engineers trade so things could get on trains, and welders. And so we're working really hard with them to make sure that those essential framework functions were able to be tackled. For our fall semester, what we've committed to is to say All of our regular lecture courses will actually be delivered in an online format, and courses requiring a lab and hands-on component will be delivered face-to-face. We are fortunate in our ability to do that because we have about 20,000 students who attend our students in the fall, but we're a commuter campus, and so we don't have residence halls that students come from. Now, we do have student athletes who participate in our athletics who we balance with on that, so that can become a chore in its own right. So in addition to the labs courses, we also have our developmental ed courses. We've determined that the students who are in our developmental ed courses struggle more in the remote environment, so we want to have face-to-face for them. Classrooms are being set up with social distancing requirements. The thing that we found that we're doing different than a lot of other institutions a little bit earlier is we understand that while we were able to move remotely and be really successful in doing so from a service standpoint to end the spring semester, as a community college, every fall we enroll thousands of students who are first time in college, first generation, and do not understand the college process. And we have spent over years, lots of energy, millions of dollars building a seamless enrollment process that we are not able to duplicate remotely. So we are opening up certain presence on campus to help students with the enrollment process, and it actually will begin on Monday. And so Tom will be able to talk a little bit, and that's what I'll turn it over to him real quick, about efforts his team has taken to make sure that safety and security are adhered to, because while we want to make sure that we provide access to enrollment opportunity for these students who can't otherwise, we want to make sure that it's safe for both them and our staff. And I think I'll pause there, and I could talk about our plan for hours, but I'll pause there and let Tom talk a bit about his team's efforts to execute our facility strategies.
Yes, and I have like basically 4 different areas that we've kind of focused on. The first one is called personal protection, because as we start to bring back our staff and get them acclimated to the environment again, we have to make sure that they are safe when they're out there working. So one of the things that we required was a mandatory watching of a COVID-19 video, which talked about the virus and how to prevent the spread of virus before they were even allowed back at the work site. Then we have a wellness self-check form that they're to do daily that basically asks us 6 questions about their health and whether they've been exposed to the virus. And if they are exposed or their health isn't good, then we ask them to stay home and self-quarantine. We've issued personal-sized hand sanitizers for every employee, a box of tissues, so if they are sneezing or coughing, that it goes directly into the trash. We promote hand washing, proper hand washing, and that's key to any control of infection. And we also supplied each employee with 2 masks that are reusable masks that they can take home and wash and use again. So those are some personal items that we have asked our employees to be involved with, and we're requiring that the masks be worn everywhere on campus when you can't maintain the social distancing of at least 6 feet. We did some changes in our worksite practices. We had each department develop a return to work plan. We are gradually returning the employees to campus. Those that can work remotely, we're still allowing to work remotely. We started things like propping doors open so you don't have to handle the doors to offices where you have a lot of traffic in and out. We're controlling the access to buildings. If people don't need to be into certain buildings, we're controlling their access. We're requiring social distancing in the classrooms, the dining areas, the lobbies. We've gone through and marked off chairs and tables and moved some chairs and tables around so that we can maintain that social distancing. We've put signage at all the building entrances and throughout the buildings and throughout campus, talking about how to be safe. We have put markings on the floor where they have the 6-foot queuing lines so that we maintain that 6-foot distance. And we even have some classes that they're going to hold like outside. We have a parking garage where we have some classes that are being held right now. We also have some changes that we're doing in their cleaning practices. Custodial does a once-a-day cleaning, but that's not really enough to keep the spread of infection. So what we've done is we've issued a bottle of ready-to-use sanitizer to every department for cleaning in between the custodial cleaning. We've given them nitrile gloves and paper towels, and we've also got some disinfectant wipes for that equipment that needs to be wiped down. As far as building modifications, we put hand sanitizer stations by each door. We are doing 100% outside air where possible. And we have put plexiglass shields up at the workstations. We're exploring the idea of foot poles for the doors to the restroom so you don't have to put your hands on the door. We have discontinued the use of hand dryers in restrooms and put up paper towel dispensers in every restroom in order to prevent the aerosol from going through the air of the possible infection. So those are a few things that we've done over the course of the last couple months. Of course, we still had our grounds people still had to work, and we still had people doing construction at some of our construction sites. But even at our construction sites, we've required people to wear masks and do the social distancing. So those are a few of the more programmatic things that we have accomplished during this process, and we're ready for students and faculty to come back for our opening of our campus on Monday.
That's excellent. Tom, did you want to come back to any of those points, or would you like me to open up for some questions?
I think we could open for questions. I want to allow enough time that we can answer a few if they have questions.
Okay, very good. So what are you finding the faculty's response to how you're reopening? Because that's sort of been an interesting dichotomy. You have a wonderful setup, I hear, with your being a commuter school and not having residence halls, which is a blessing. Let me tell you, it's a blessing from hearing the other schools. So can you talk about how you're managing the faculty side of this and what you're doing?
Yeah, we're not unique in that we have faculty who have their own interests, and I think what all of our institutions have really had to balance during this is doing what's right with the limited information we have, along with the politics of the situation. And so what I mean by that is that we have individuals who think we've overreacted and we shouldn't have had an interruption to our process, and that includes members of our faculty. And we've also had individuals who said, you know, despite all the efforts you're undertaking, it's not enough, and I'm not comfortable coming back. So with our faculty in particular, we've had to be really mindful of making sure that as expectations are set and clear, they're not in violation of our management agreement, that they're compliant with new federal legislation, and trying to work with them. Just because we set an expectation, particularly with faculty, they're in charge of the teaching and learning. And so we can set an expectation for them, but if they don't feel confident in their ability to execute their job, that means students aren't probably going to learn as well. And so we try to be receptive to their concerns and their thoughts, but consistency is critical. So we've had some examples with our chief academic officer where he has been able to create some balance and consistency with some faculty who have loved working remotely and moving well, and some who say, I don't do that as well. I'm prepared to come back in my area and meet our needs. And so the two extremes are making sure we can ready the campus for the programs that really need to be on campus and faculty's needs are met as far as safety and security and contractually obligated. We have a lot more contact time now. If we have fewer students coming in to open labs, it's a lot different than having everybody come in at 11 o'clock. The other extreme is that student who's taught, or that faculty member who's taught face-to-face for 35 years and was not prepared to move remotely. We actually had a couple faculty who went ahead and chose to retire as a result of what we were looking to do in the fall. So we worked with them to allow them to retire because they were able to do so and not up for the task of what we needed them to do in the fall remotely.
Really a great way of addressing the situation. There's a lot of flexibility in your response and the choices, and recognizing that the a much larger at-risk population. Thank you, Randy. And so I'm getting some questions on some of the details of execution, and they're around doors being propped open when you, I wrote that down myself too, and they said, is there any impact on fire code issues as you are propping those open, Tom?
Well, we're just in the occupied areas where we have somebody right there. We're not propping them open and leaving the area. Well, you know, it's when somebody's in an office so that they can come in and out. So we're not going away and leaving them propped open. You know, it's just no different than, you know, instead of opening the door all the time, you have it open while you're in the office, and then it's shut when you leave the office and there's nobody in the office.
Terrific. That is that's great. And then I've got water fountains and bottle filling stations. We've had that on so many of these town halls, but they'd like to know what your what are you doing and how do you weigh in on the either use of water fountains, bottle filling stations, or not?
Yeah, and we're still talking about that because we have bottle filling stations, and we do have drinking fountains throughout. The question is do you shut off the water for everybody, and then how do you supply the water? So that's a difficult question, you know, and we're still struggling with that a little bit. At this point, we haven't shut down the water fountains. We do have hand sanitizer by each door, and the water fountains are close to the restrooms, you know, so we haven't gone about shutting them down yet.
Okay, very good. And that is a struggle for everyone. A number of schools are saying that they are going to leave it to choice. And if folks want to choose that the individual responsibility part, it's you know, could be a testy issue and liability. So very good. And I know that people are struggling. Tom, do you know the brand of disinfectant? Someone asked about that brand of disinfectant that you're using.
You know, we've been like everybody else trying to get disinfectant, and we've got several different brands that whatever we can get that is quaternary type disinfectant. As far as the brand goes, you know, there's a lot out there, but the supply has been somewhat limited. So what we've been trying to do is source it from a number of vendors. So one time it may be one brand, another time it may be another brand. We do use some ionized water for cleaning on a regular basis, but as we go out and have people start cleaning their areas, they're using a quaternary type disinfectant. So,
very good.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Have you implemented spraying and fogging? Have you decided to go that direction?
You know, we just recently got a machine in that we can use for that. A couple machines. We've had limited resources. You know, when it came to get those devices, we're probably looking at those more for a large area if we have a contamination that we know about and we got to use the room right away. You know, the COVID virus is after it's set for 7 days, they say that it's no longer viable. So if our first choice would be to leave the room vacant if possible. We've also addressed that with some of the vehicles. You know, if we have to use a vehicle and then somebody else has to use it, the idea of fogging in the vehicles. So it's a idea that we are just getting started with, because we haven't been able to get the equipment until just the last week or so.
Okay, excellent. And then I'm going to go backwards to this door propped open, because there was a tag onto that, and it was around. Have you talked to the fire marshal about that? Because they're very interested. It was a very creative approach to reducing high touch doors and such, and knobs. And so did you find yourself doing that so that you could feel confident and comfortable?
Well, we haven't gone and asked their opinion, but we've had inspectors out on the campus, and they haven't said anything to us about that. As long as we have people in the room and we can take the doorstop out, you know, when we leave, you know, or move something so it's not propped open, you know, as long as it's an occupied area. If it's an unoccupied area, we don't prop them open. Got it.
Okay, very good. So you've got your own protocols for it. Can you talk about what types of applications you use to install for installing plexiglass? Did you do it in, you know, what were the types of areas? I think some folks were really intrigued by that and wanted to know whether it was customer service areas or whether it was offices and things like that.
Well, we've installed in both. What we've done is we've gone through and we do an assessment. They fill out a return to work plan, and they check on there if they want us to do an assessment of their area. We go to their area, and sometimes it's in between the people that are in one cubicle and the next cubicle, and sometimes it's where you're facing the student body, students in line or something like that. So we've done a variety. Some are set on the counter, some hang from the ceiling. We've manufactured a lot of them ourselves. We did buy some that set on the counter. So it's just been a variety, but we are looking at any area where we might be able to put a shield up and prevent the spread when it is at least a 6-foot distance between people.
That's excellent advice.
I might just add to that. That doesn't mean that, you know, we're going to be able to get every place isolated. Some places you will still have to wear a mask.
Excellent. So I'm going to go to the law on PPE and how you're ensuring it's being met or maintained, because there are some rules around it. Someone had asked a question about that, so I wanted to make sure that I got to it. The question was specifically, the law requires the employer to furnish and maintain all PPE. If the employees are being required to maintain their PPE, how do you know it is being properly maintained? It sounded like when you were discussing it that you had that in hand. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, really the main thing that we're doing is different than we have in the past, is we've added the mask to the whole mix, and we're requiring people to wear the mask when they're not within, if they can't maintain the 6-foot distance, the social distancing that's recommended. So that we've given everybody the 2 masks for them to maintain on their own, and that's really the big difference in PPE.
Perfect. So I have an interesting one, Randy, you might want to chime in on this, but someone said, what happens if a pandemic breaks out while school is in session?
Yeah, that's something that all schools are grappling with, and you're seeing changes to academic calendars across the country. A number of schools, particularly those with residence halls, you're seeing maybe forego fall breaks and try to come in August and send students home at Thanksgiving and do online finals, a lot of things like that. We are not taking that route because of the classes that we are offering on campus only being those lab component ones. But most of those lab component programs have minimum hours for labs. And so what our instructors are doing is working at the beginning of the semester to try to make sure that they can meet those criteria as swiftly as they can. So if they have to transition to remote, then that will be made available. And what we had a significant semester with course withdrawals, as many institutions did. But our goal is for those courses that are requiring that on-campus presence and clinicals to get as many of those hours in before we run the risk of that. And then otherwise we'll run the risk of incomplete and work backwards from there.
Okay, excellent. So we already have more questions than we can answer in the time we have allotted. And I know that you did a great job, and so did the participants in throwing them at us right and left. And we will, if necessary, if you don't mind, we'll send some to you that you too could follow up on, because they're really great questions for the community college environment and would be awesome. And we will secure answers to those questions, folks, that chimed in for the community college portion of this. I want to thank Randy and Tom for their engagement today. I really appreciate it. And now I'm going to want to move on. And I know, Randy, you have a hard stop. Tom, you may stay with us, but let's see how this goes. We're going to move to our second institutional duo, which is the University of Arizona. Dr. Liesl Folks is the Senior Vice President and Provost at the University of Arizona. She is the Chief Academic Officer of the university and oversees all academic programs, as well as faculty and student affairs. Dr. Folks is a member of the President's Senior Leadership Team, which includes the implementation of the institution's strategic plan and ensuring that the university demonstrates excellence as it pursues its myriad goals. She is also a professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Prior to serving in this role, Dr. Folks was the Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at the University of Buffalo, where she built a reputation as a champion for women and underrepresented minorities in science and engineering degree programs. Dr. Folks holds 14 U.S. patents, has authored more than 60 peer-reviewed papers, and serves on numerous boards and committees. Prior to working in higher education, she spent 16 years in research and development in Silicon Valley. Dr. Folks earned a master's degree in business administration from Cornell University after completing both a doctorate and Bachelor of Science honors degree in physics from the University of Western Australia. And our second contributor of this duo is Chris Kopak. Chris is the Assistant Vice President, Facilities Management Department at the University of Arizona. Chris has over 30 years of facility management experience from the University of Michigan Contract Services and the University of Arizona. He provides a solid leadership background that focuses on developing one team of highly efficient and effective employees working to improve processes that generate operational and financial savings back to the university, all while providing outstanding customer service. He obtained a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in organizational management while working full-time. Chris is a past president of APA, where he focused on the theme of harnessing and transferring knowledge within our facilities field. Liesl and Chris, let's hear your strategy.
Thank you, Lander. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Liesl, I'll let you start, and thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to share information with our APA members, Liesl. Can you hear us?
I can now. I was having trouble unmuting for reasons that I can't explain.
Okay, Liesl, no worries.
It's great to be here. I'm delighted to share with you some of our thinking about how to open the campus, and to be here with Chris is an honor. He's been absolutely key to building our plans. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of developing a plan. We've developed, first of all, we put together a core team that built guiding principles for us to follow as we launched the university back into face-to-face operations in the fall. And that core team involved epidemiologists, it involved faculty, it involved people who understand risk. And that then informed the work of the next group that started thinking about the challenges, and that was a group that we called the implementation team leads or teams. Those teams were were set up to think about all the different activity types that happen on our campuses every week. And I will point out that the University of Arizona is a land-grant university, which means we have cooperative extension activities that span the entire state. So we're worried not just about what happens on our main campus in Tucson, but also at our branch campus in Sierra Vista, at our distance learning sites that are all around the state, in cooperative extension, which means we were also worrying about our 4-H students. We have 140,000 minors that are involved in the 4-H program that we run. So a great many moving pieces across the whole campus. So our implementation teams were put together by activity type. So for example, obviously we had one team thinking about teaching and learning across all of our campuses. We had a whole separate group worrying about cooperative extension. We had a team that was worrying about athletics and arts, because we run a very, very active arts program with lots of theatre and dance and performances that are open to the public in a normal year. And of course, we have a very big athletics program. And so both of those groups actually came together. They recognized the similarities between those activity domains, and they came together to deliver plans that would be cohesive across those domains. So those implementation guidelines are actually just being finalized now and being utilized by individual work units. So that could be an individual academic department, but it could also be our finance team, to develop their own local operating plan for how to move forward through the pandemic with the maximum number of protections in place for our employees and our students, while, of course, ideally allowing us to get back to some semblance of normalcy in our operation. So that strategy is still rolling out, and only time will tell whether it was the right approach or not, but it has allowed us to bring the wisdom of the masses to the table. There's no doubt that we've been able to involve hundreds and hundreds of people from across campus in developing a strategy, and now we're building plans around those strategies. Chris's team has been absolutely instrumental to building those plans, because of course so much of what has to happen has a relationship to our built infrastructure and how we manage it. I don't know that I need to say much more. Chris, can you patch over any holes that I left there?
I thought you gave a great summary, Liesl, and again, it's been a pleasure working with everybody. You know, we've talked many a times over the years. I've been heavily involved with APA of just the team concept, and the fact is, it's just been such a great team concept of one team working with the faculty, staff, and our students, and really covering so many details. And as Liesl mentioned, the SWIRT, we called it initially, a return to campus in a safe manner. And I just got off a phone call with those folks as we're looking from a legal to our occupational health to our risk management staff to make sure we're covering everything in a very compassionate manner, making sure we're covering all the details. First and foremost, bring this campus back up in a safe manner. And then as we go to the implementation team, all the fine details, and if we fast forward it, that's the implementation team now, it's already starting to happen. We have over 7,000 people on campus currently out of our 60,000 faculty, staff, and students. Roughly about 44,000 students come to the U of A. And so we have our athletes have just started coming back this past week. There's antibody testing, antigen testing that's taking place on those student athletes. So we have that moving forward. We're looking at doing antibody testing with our entire campus starting on July 1st. So there's a huge amount of logistical support that is needed. And then we look to our medical professionals, to the testing, tracing, and treating when we do have a COVID case on campus. And if anything, as we continue going through the whole process, and you know, facilities plays such a critical role in the built environment. And no time in my career, and a lot of you know my story. I started working as custodian when I was 18, when I was going to college, working at the University of Michigan hospitals. At no time in my career have our custodial staff been so important for our buildings, for cleaning, for health, and reducing cross-infection. And so working with our medical professionals on tracing, when we will have a COVID case on campus, how do we address that in a very systematic fashion, respond to the areas, whether it's a research area, offices and such, and then you also have the tracing in place. So there's, if anything, the communication is just critical on a routine basis of the entire campus. And so a lot of moving parts right now, but it really takes great teamwork and compassion, because a lot of folks have said in the early going, it was so crazy initially to consolidate our student population, to get our dorms ready for possible medical professionals. Fortunately, we didn't see that, but we're starting to see an uptick now here in Arizona. And then as we move now to the long phase, this is going to be with us for a period of time, a good school year. And so we want to pace ourselves, but we also want to work hand in hand, as they say, so we all are doing this in a compassionate manner and making sure the campus is safe as we move forward. Liesl, you want to jump in on, as we're starting to look at reopening, do you want to comment on that, on some of the items we're doing, and then I'll jump in also?
Yeah, I'm really happy to. I'm going to echo what Chris said about how important our custodial team is in making sure that we can affect our plan. It really, as Chris said, has never been more important to us, the work that they do, and I'm actually incredibly grateful to the whole team for being so flexible and adaptable through this stressful period. I want to point to an overarching principle that I think is going to be tremendously important to success for actually any organization trying to bring people back into face-to-face operations. And that's the concept of trying to make the circumstances within each work site, in a large organization, obviously, as similar as possible. And the reason that that's going to be important to us is that we know, and there's great data on this, that shows that people do their best work, their most creative, their most productive work, their most careful work, when their stress levels are low. And so we've been thinking hard about trying to create a really unified, for us, we call it the Wildcat experience, because University of Arizona students are known as Wildcats. But we want to create a Wildcat experience that is as similar as possible in all of the different locations across the campus, so that when a student or a staff or a faculty member moves from one activity to another activity, from one location to another location, they're not continually being bombarded with different rules and different ways of trying to put in place COVID-19 mitigation. Now, that will only get you so far. It's very clear that in some laboratories, we need really specialized mitigations to protect people against COVID-19 spread. But in many cases, that's not the case. But how do we do that? It's a whole wraparound delivery of the COVID mitigation strategy. It's how are we going to implement the face coverings rules? It's how do we think about disinfecting routines? How do we think about physical distancing? We want uniformity in our approaches to be delivered across all of our work sites, so that people know if you're walking into a University of Arizona site, this is what you can expect. And with that, we hope to reduce the stress levels so that people can do their best work, and our students in particular can succeed in their studies.
What I would add onto that too, Liesl, as we start looking at our campus as a whole, not only are we looking at our main campus, about 400 acres, very condensed. We roughly have about 12 million square feet on campus. We then also look at kind of the inner ring. What are those areas that are around Tucson, Arizona, that are U of A related? And then we're stretching the entire state. And so within our facilities, what we've been doing, like a lot of universities, we're providing the signage through our facilities management sign shop. We have just completed, as of today, every door on campus has the CDC requirements. But now we're going into the buildings with all the proper signs, the 6 feet separation and such. Hand sanitizers, we're placing those in every entrance door, every classroom, over 500 classrooms. Part of that too is the supply chain. What are some of those critical items that we want to make sure we don't run out of, and how do we address where are we going to get those? In the early going, we're roughly in about the 15th week of all this. We went ahead and ordered just hundreds and hundreds of gallons of disinfectant And we had always upgraded our disinfectant to a stronger disinfectant in January, knowing when students and faculty and staff would come back to campus, it seemed like an increase of influenza and bronchitis and upper respiratory infections would come on campus. So we already had a disinfectant in place when everything went south here on us with the COVID-19 in March that kills, it was approved by EPA, it kills the COVID-19. So that's a positive. We set up disinfecting station that we've gone ahead and produced over 1,000 spray bottles in the initial going that we offered to our building managers and our researchers and folks in the offices. We now are ramping that up to over 5,000 spray bottles of disinfectant that we are coordinating. And when you say coordinating, how are we coordinating on 12 million square feet in the entire state of Arizona? We're having a building managers meeting, key contacts within our buildings. We started these 4 weeks ago, and we're using our building managers as ambassadors to help us get information of where signage needs to go, sneeze guards, personal protective equipment, disinfecting, masks to get the masks distributed out to the buildings. It's just a great coordination that's taking place. And then we started saying, how do we break this such a large task down so we can get it done all by August 24th when school's supposed to open? Facilities management within our staff, we pulled our team together. We have 12 different project managers, broke the entire state into 12 zones, campus into 10 zones, and then the inner and outer properties of our University of Arizona. So we've assigned a project manager communicating with the building managers to make sure their needs are met. So the communication has been critical, and then also the communication within just our facilities teams. We play such a critical role throughout the school year 24/7, and so the communication with our leadership team, that took place and continues to take place every day since the beginning 15 weeks ago. And then also our facilities team as a whole of 670 strong. We went ahead and started doing Zoom meetings 3 weeks into this because things were changing so fast and you would have false rumors. I like to say no bueno chismes, no good gossip. We needed to make sure we're out there talking to our staff routinely. If there is misinformation, we can go ahead and clarify it. And that's been extremely helpful too with just the communication. Liesl, do we want to talk? Go ahead, Liesl.
I want to pick up on your comment there, Chris, which is great about, rumor and the need to communicate really frequently and openly with people. This process of preparing our campus for coming back to face-to-face engaged learning in the midst of the pandemic has really modified or impacted every single aspect of our operations. There is not a single corner of the university that won't be somehow different when we come back in the fall. And when you think about what an enormous undertaking that is, there is no wonder that it's hard to communicate cleanly and smoothly to all our stakeholders who all have wonderful questions that we didn't think of in our initial communications and so forth. And I just want to echo what Chris said about how important it is to have open channels of communication at every level in your organization, and how valuable we found it to try and be nimble in turning around and responding. When we hear new rumors coming up, we quickly have to recognize that where people don't have the information they need, rumors will fill the gap. Well-intentioned rumors, I'm not talking about anybody trying to be evil here. This is people just trying to do the best they can with imperfect information in a world that is much less certain for them than it has been in the past. So I want to reiterate what you said there, Chris, about gosh, the critically important piece that communicating at every level in the organization is going to play in us being successful as we head towards the fall.
Well, Lisa, what we've talked about and everybody listening, it's just that fear factor and the trepidation. There's so much has been coming at us, and sometimes multiple times a day. At no time in our careers have we had to be so flexible, and quite frankly, not our careers too, just our entire personal life. There's the fear factor. We want to, we talk about the facilities family, the U of A family here. We want to keep everybody safe. Everybody has great intentions, but I had to stop listening to the news. It was just constant negative. And so we want to keep people safe reduce the fear factor. We have ambassadors out there making sure we're on the same page. We're making sure we're doing town halls routinely with the faculty and the staff and the researchers so we can listen to any question. And quite frankly, no question is a bad one. We'll follow up on it and get the information. Lisa, do we want to talk about testing at all and contact tracing?
Sure. Early on in the pandemic, I was watching with interest the actions in other countries that did a really good job in moving quickly to stop the spread of COVID-19. You will hear from my silly accent that I didn't grow up in Arizona. In fact, I grew up in Australia. And that's one of the countries where they've had real success in bending down the curve. And I think at this point, they're down to reporting, 1 or 2 cases a day coming up in Australia. So they're very close to really being able to get back to relatively normal life there. And what we see again and again in countries that have done this well is that they built really vast testing and tracing protocols really quickly. And we've struggled with that. We've struggled with that in Arizona generally. And what I think, but what we need to absorb as a university from looking at these experiences elsewhere, which are of course at scale, millions and millions of people, is that we needed to make sure that we would have our own robust testing and tracing protocols in place on campus. And in fact, our experience with trying to ramp up our own virus testing on campus taught us pretty quickly that we need to own that. We can't be relying on external laboratories to serve our needs. I'll give you a really pointed example. We were doing great with getting our virus testing done initially. We were getting our test results back within 24 to 36 hours, which seemed really good. Well, then the state turned around and started expanding their virus testing program, which was good. I'm not being critical there. But that then swamped the commercial laboratories, who then started taking as many as 8 days to turn around our results. Well, 8-day turnaround on virus testing is like having no virus testing at all, because I don't know who's positive and I don't know to be quarantining people if I don't know for 8 days who's infected. So that has been a key learning for us, is that we must own our own virus testing and contact tracing protocol. I'm really proud of the group out of public health that's built our contact tracing program, coming out of an existing effort that we had already operational, but had been historically delivered in a really old world way with bits of paper and phone calls and so on. That protocol has all been moved onto a fully digital platform. And we're now, standing by. We're just expanding the number of people that are trained to do contact tracing so that we can easily and readily do the contact tracing that's needed for our campus community using our own resources in-house. We're doing the same thing for our testing protocols. We will have in-house an antigen test, we'll have virus testing, and we'll have our antibody testing available in-house with rapid turnaround time, so that we can own the timelines, as it were, so that we have a system that is responsive to any outbreak. I want to add one more fun fact, which is we're also doing wastewater-based epidemiology. And to quote the lead scientist, Dr. Ian Pepper, on this, he says the poop doesn't lie, by which he means that when we test wastewater effluent coming out of our buildings, we can see virus spiking in the wastewater before anybody in the building has worked out for themselves that they're not feeling well. So we plan to use wastewater-based epidemiology, especially on our dormitories, to get early detection of virus infection, so we can go in and test people before anybody showing any symptoms. We think that that's going to be really an important part of our strategy to get on top of infections quickly, get on top of clusters quickly, and stop them from spreading throughout the campus community. Chris, I know you've been working with Dr. Pepper to make sure, or your team has been working with him to make sure that he has access to all the buildings that have large numbers of people in them.
It's a great experiment that we're doing. We've met with him recently. Again, facilities management. I mean, we play a critical role in keeping everybody safe. And now we've gone to 20 different locations around our dorms. We figured ways that we can go ahead and get the sewage, do the testing. So again, supporting our researchers and our universities, whether it was before COVID or even now, is so important of our facilities management staff. So that program has now moved forward in the antibody testing, the antigen testing. I've mentioned our athletes now have just come back, and first and foremost, always in a safe manner. And facilities management plays a critical role there with the logistics and making sure everything's taken care of, making sure the biohazard is removed. And as I mentioned, the cleaning is critical. And I affectionately like to call our custodial staff who are trained in isolation cleaning procedures our germ busters, because they are on 24/7 call. We got a great procedure to respond to areas. So a lot of great research going on to hopefully come up with the vaccine so we can keep everybody safe at all times.
So Chris, let me ask you, that really prompted a wonderful question when you and Liesl talked about your program approach to owning that space. And one said that, they want to know how others could follow your lead on this, contact tracing testing for virus, antigen, and antibodies, et cetera, when they don't necessarily have the University of Arizona resources. But do you have any suggestions for some of the folks with respect to this? While we have a little more time, I think it would be great to expand on that. Liesl, or
yeah, absolutely. We've been thinking about that a lot because, of course, we're in regular dialogue, for example, with our local community colleges, and they don't have biosafety lab level 3 facilities and so on to work with. Even if they had the epidemiologists to work with. So I agree that this is a resource question that's of key importance. What I would strongly recommend is to just consider what is possible to do in-house and really focus on that. I know that our SAFER team, that's SAFER, which is run by Dr. Kristen Pogreba-Brown in our School of Public Health. She, I know, has been working to make sure that our contact tracing protocol is available to other people so that we can support other institutions who want to follow this set of best practices. And that is not particularly resource intensive, in as much as we're using, we have, for example, paid graduate students that we've trained up to manage teams of student volunteers who want to help their community to do a lot of the work that's required within the contact tracing process. And the nice thing about that is it's a fully scalable model. We know we can share with people each person who's a supervisor, if you like, they can run a team of this many students who will do this work, and the student should work for this many hours because otherwise they get exhausted just because of the constantly conversing with people and so on and so on. So there's a whole protocol there that we can share. So that's probably the easiest piece to get on top of. I would suggest also, though, that antigen testing, which is, I think the antigen tests run at about 95% accuracy, so they're not nearly as good as the gold standard real-time PCR test that's used for virus testing. Doing antigen testing, if you have a campus health unit, is not very expensive to stand up. It can be done with a much it is still a nasal swab, but it's not a very invasive one. So it can actually, I know there's lots of people actually working out whether students could collect the samples themselves. Ideally, students will be able to collect the sample themselves, bring it in to have it tested, and the machines to run the test operate in about 15 minutes, and they're relatively inexpensive. Chris, remind me, are we talking $1,800 per plate reader or something like that?
Yeah, that sounds about right, Liesl. Exactly.
And they can do, I want to say they can do 4 or 8 samples an hour, something on that order. So to get antigen testing built up, I think is not a very expensive proposition for any institution that has some kind of a healthcare service. And again, that's something that even if you partner with a healthcare provider, that's something that they could stand up and operate in-house in a pretty straightforward way. Now, 5% inaccuracy on that test, right? So we still need a backup plan for what do we do when we've got a test positive, we want to go and get a PCR test, but we immediately know we should be quarantining this person because there's a real chance that this person is infected. So I hope that gives you some ideas. The antibody testing and the virus testing are more expensive and require much more infrastructure. But I think if you focus on antigen testing and contact tracing and get ownership over those two pieces, already you'd be in a much better position. Chris, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I know we're running short of time. I think that's spot on, Liesl, in terms of the testing. As I'm working with the research side of the house, standing up our antibody testing and antigen testing, not only for our athletes, now the essential service staff who've been here from week one, the month of July will be concentrating on all those folks who've been here along with our student unions and our dorms. And so that's critical. As we're getting ready to wrap up, I do want to just thank our essential service staff, not only at the University of Arizona, also throughout our APA universe, because everybody's just doing a great job who's in charge of our universities and community colleges. And Liesl, thank you also for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share with our members.
It's great.
And I want to thank the both of you. You did a fabulous job. You really laid out an incredible program that you're engaged in, and we have learned much from, we were calling them lessons learning right now, and so we really, really appreciate it. So thank you again. And Liesl, I know you have a hard stop as well at this drop of the hour, so I recognize that. And Chris, you probably do too. I know your schedule. So I will go ahead and move to our third duo. Thank you again so much for what you have contributed to this body of knowledge now.
Thank you, Lander.
Thank you, Lander. That was awesome to be part of this meeting. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much, both of you. So let's go to our third institutional duo from Spelman College. Dawn Alston, Chief Financial Officer and Vice President for Business and Financial Affairs at Spelman College. Dawn has enjoyed a 20-year career at Spelman and was appointed to her current role this past September 2019. Dawn's years of service provide a unique vantage point in ensuring the college's financial health and well-being, represents a seamless transition in its leadership, and considered instrumental in Spelman reaching its strategic goals, including enhancing operational excellence. Dawn joined Spelman in 1999 as a research technician in the Department of Biology and Biochemistry, and enjoyed a very successful 17-year tenure in the Division of Business and Financial Affairs. Dawn served as a compliance officer at the Department of Defense and was an adjunct biology instructor at Wofford College and Tri-County Technical College. And our second contributor of this duo, Art Frazier III, Director of Facilities Management and Services at Spelman College. Art is also a licensed architect, AIA. Under Art's leadership, the Facilities Department at Spelman has been nationally recognized as a leader in sustainability among historically Black colleges and received the President's 2008 Award for Excellence in Customer Service and APA's Sustainability Innovation Award in 2016. He worked for the Philadelphia Architects Workshop and Cooper, Carey and Associates and Lord and Sargent in Atlanta. For 2 years, he served as Deputy Director of Facilities of the Fulton County Capital Improvements Program. He later joined Emory University's Department of Project Management and Construction before going to Spelman College. Art also served as the former president of GAPA, Georgia APA. Art received a bachelor's degree in design of the environment and a master's degree in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. Dawn and Art, let's hear your strategy.
Thank you. I just want to give a few words to put us a little bit into context. Spelman College is located in Atlanta, Georgia. Our typical student body is about 2,100 students. We're at HBCU. We have approximately 39 acres. And we always have a balanced budget. And so you can imagine what COVID-19 has done to disrupt our activities. We are also a part of a consortium. It's called the AUC Consortium, and there are 3 other schools that participate in this: Morehouse College, Clark Atlanta University, and Morehouse School of Medicine. So in this particular instance, this proves to be a very big part of how we are tackling the disruption of COVID-19, because our students actually cross-register between all of the campuses. So that means that they, take courses between all of the campuses and go freely between all of the campuses. Faculty members go freely. So that's about a population of 9,000 between all of our institutions, which means that we have collaborated a lot in regards to how to deal with testing and tracing, and are trying to be consistent in our scheduling and what we will do in the fall. We actually have not announced a final decision as to what scenarios we'll have in the fall. We're looking at 2. We will either be at a low density capacity, where approximately 37 to 40% of our student population will be able to return and live in the residence halls. So that would mean we could have anywhere from 550 to 600 students on campus living in the residence halls. We are still thinking about what that might mean for commuter students, whether they would be able to come face to face. And then the other option that we have been considering is a remote option where everyone would continue to learn remotely. But as I'm sure that your audience understands, whatever option we endeavor to do, we will have to start to prepare now for whenever anyone comes on campus. And so we are thinking about our workforce. We anticipate that we'll announce a final decision by July the 1st. As far as the consortium is concerned, we have organized an AUC task force that deals with all of the pieces that COVID brings. So there's a subcommittee for facilities, there's a subcommittee for residential life, there's a subcommittee for budget and operations and technology and communications. And then on each campus, we also have that same subcommittee structure. We will also be doing our testing and tracing as one unit, and Morehouse School of Medicine, luckily, is taking the lead on that, which is very appropriate since they're a medical school. So that's the foundation of our structure that I wanted to share. And I guess I'll turn it back over to you or to Art to discuss more about specific things that we're doing as far as facilities.
Thank you, Dawn. Following behind Chris, it's key. We're about a tenth of the size of a campus of what Chris spoke to. I think he mentioned 12 million square feet. We're more like 1.3 million square feet and only 2,100 students. But the same principles apply. I know one of the things he was asked about was, or earlier panelist was asked about, was drinking fountains. One of the things we're doing there is disabling the drinking fountain portion and maintaining the bottle filler portion. We have not yet figured out what to do in locations where we strictly have a drinking fountain without a bottle filler. But as Dawn said, we have been collaborating with our counterparts at our neighboring institutions. Additionally, we've expanded that collaboration with assistance from Sightlines. We've been having bi-weekly calls with other facilities directors from similar institutions that are members of the Associated Colleges of the South, which is a collection of over a dozen liberal arts colleges. I can't name them all, so I'll just leave it at that. But that has been very helpful, as have the APA town halls and other collaborations we've been able to expose ourselves to learn from each of you what you're doing on campuses. As it's been said, these are learning lessons, and we can all learn from each other as to the best things to implement on our campuses. Our maintenance teams have worked continuously since March, and it's been very helpful in that they were able to get a jump on lots of preventative maintenance in academic and administrative and residence halls that were largely vacant due to telecommuting, which has helped us do one of the primary things related to our systems in terms of making sure that they are operating properly. They've also been able to get a head start on cleaning all the residence halls in hopes that our students will be returning to campus. We recently brought back our residence hall housekeepers as well to complete the cleaning process in those halls. We're doing a lot of the things that others are doing, signage throughout, emphasizing wearing a mask and social distancing and frequent hand washing. We are looking at signs in specific locations, at elevators, at stairs, reminding people once again to properly social distance. We also are introducing a new disinfection system on campus. We're switching to Genion Technologies system, which allows us to do some fogging for very quick disinfection. I believe it has a minute kill time. So we're exploring all sorts of other things as well to go beyond the basic recommendations and looking at the pros and cons of modifications to our HVAC systems to improve air quality in those spaces.
Art, that's fantastic. I'm telling you, the things that you folks are doing, you were right about the differences, although in size and that sort of thing between University of Arizona or Johnson County Community College, but the differences aren't, we're pretty similar when it comes to COVID and the things that we need to do. You've answered a long-standing question around disabling drinking fountains and focusing on bottle fillers. That's really important because we've been getting those questions all along the way. Can you tell us about cleaning high-touch areas, especially after hours? Because a lot of schools don't have as much in terms of resources, but they want to try to get to them after hours. Could you talk about those high-touch areas after hours?
Okay, well, even beyond after hours, in early March, we implemented, we have a cold and flu season disinfection plan in place that calls for more frequent disinfection of high-touch surfaces. So we actually have two teams on campus, one that deals with our residence halls and one that deals with our academic and administration buildings. And both those teams have increased the frequencies that they clean those surfaces. And our academic and administration team does have an after-hours shift that comes and does deep cleaning in all those buildings. And that's really how will be one of our major plans of attack in our individual classrooms. They will do a deep cleaning of those spaces daily. And during the course of the day, hourly, elevator buttons, door handles, stair rails, and those other highly touched surfaces will be cleaned by the staff that's on hand during the day. We plan on
the between classes. That's come up a lot.
I was about ready to mention that, Lander. We looked at that, and one, one, we haven't figured out the frequency of classes yet, so it was impossible for me to determine how many more resources I would need to provide. But no, we are not. We're focused on those highly frequently touched surfaces and making sure that they're disinfected. We are looking at 2 plans right now for what we would leave in the classrooms for students and faculty to wipe down surfaces when they enter the classroom. If we can find a decent supply of wipes, we'll leave some wipes behind. If not, we're looking at leaving bottles of disinfectant along with microfiber cloths that they can wipe those surfaces down before they start class.
Got it. That's excellent. I knew you were going to go there. I got a little excited about it. Could I ask you to tackle the residence halls, because that has come up a number of times about cleaning in personal dorm rooms once the students move in. Is that something that you believe you will be doing?
No, we debated that. That's not something we typically do. Backing up just a little bit, in our residence halls, our occupancy plan is based on, in our buildings with communal restrooms, we will be occupying 1 student per room. And in those cases, you would end up with 8 to 12 students sharing the common bathrooms that they have in those buildings. We have 1 suite style residence hall, and initially we considered occupying it so students would not have to share a bathroom. In order to accommodate more students, we are looking to fully occupy that building, and students would be sharing a bathroom with 1 other roommate. And in the past, we have just gone in those bathrooms on a monthly basis. And that's where we are considering if we need to increase the frequency of cleaning those restrooms and how we would go about that. In the residence halls with common area restrooms, we're looking at cleaning frequencies being increased in those common bathrooms, but not cleaning in individual bedrooms.
Thank you, Art. And I'm seeing a pattern developing across these town halls in that approach, because there is an individual responsibility factor in all of this versus the institution's responsibility. And so the handling of it with, cleaning caddies or whatever you want to call them, providing those supplies is really important. Someone did ask, Art, the use of UV lighting for disinfection. Are you considering that?
Considering, but it's not high on my list. We are looking possibly at doing ionization. And in the research I'm doing and talking with engineers, I tell people all the time, remember, I'm an architect, but I do speak engineering. I actually started out in engineering.
I know you.
But the UV disinfects the air in the air handler. And the ionization is said to emit ion particles into the airspace that can attach to the virus in the space. So I'm looking at that and exploring it and further evaluating the pros and cons of both. So far, we have not made a decision. We're being very cautious with increasing airflow due to our intake of outside airflow, due to our high humidity levels. We're very concerned about whether our buildings will be able to properly dehumidify additional quantities of outside air. And we're being, I guess, smart about increasing filtration levels and looking to see what is the highest for a given air handler that we can go to.
That's terrific. And so, Dawn, I'm going to ask you a very different question, and it's around your communication planning. You know, as you approach your decision July 1, how are you laying out your communication plans with your stakeholders, your constituency groups?
Very carefully. We have actually been very intentional about doing a lot of communicating throughout the entire process. So during the semester, immediately after we sent all of our students home, we began to have weekly town hall meetings in which the president would deliver a brief, maybe 30 minutes synopsis of what was going on the campus and how we were planning, really based on different things that were relevant at the time. And so, for instance, as we had the students moving out, there were some students that had to remain on campus. And so there was one town hall that specifically addressed those students that had some type of hardship that had to remain on campus and how we would handle that. And so we've taken the same strategy to continue even through the summer. We do have our town halls every 2 weeks as opposed to every week now, but each of those town halls now during the summer is now really devoted to talking about each one of the options and what it may look like. And so we've been really intentional about communicating that we'll have, that the two options are now that there'll either be some students on campus or no students on campus. We've been very transparent about what that might mean as far as those students that are on campus, that this is not your typical experience. Our last town hall focused on what it may mean, what it may look like for those students on campus that you might, you would probably have to be tested. You will have to be tested as a baseline before you come on campus. It would mean changes to our facilities. As far as events are concerned, it would mean that maybe you wouldn't have homecoming the way that you normally would. And so now we are actually, because we haven't laid out a final decision, now we're actually planning on how we would further the communication from the town halls to sending out. We've also been sending out emails that come specifically from the Office of Public Relations. I actually think one has gone out almost weekly. And then we've also been doing surveys. And so we've been surveying our students to determine who wants to come back to campus, and that's almost everybody, who does not want to come back to campus. And so we've been really involving all of our constituency and feel like our communications is really important. We've also coordinated our communications between all of the campuses in the consortium.
That's fantastic, Dawn. The fact that I do hear that students do want to come back. So that begs the next question around, you do have at-risk faculty, and so the students are the low-risk side, even though we have great care and concern for them, but we also worry about the faculty. What kinds of challenges have you had with respect to the faculty side of this?
Right, and so I just want to add one thing to your students. So our demographic is probably a little bit different, and so we've done the research, and we know that almost half of our demographic actually has some type of underlying condition, even on the student or the faculty or staff side.
Wow. Okay.
And, right, and so that definitely makes it a challenge. We've surveyed our faculty and our staff as well, and have had mixed reactions. Some faculty, of course, feel that they should not come back to campus because they're nervous about it. Others feel okay. I think the clear thing here is that communication is definitely key, And the plan, communication of a plan to keep people safe is definitely the key. And so our faculty, we're thinking about now whether we would force people, and I don't think we would, to come to campus who did not feel safe. And so, but we are trying to communicate that we have a clear strategy for keeping people safe, such as, issuing PPE to everyone, making sure that our students have like during their orientation session, they would get a bag with PPE in it. And education is key. So that would be part of our training, our testing and tracing app that we're going to get an outside vendor to do this, has an education piece to it. And so, to answer your question, we do have some faculty that do not feel that they would want to come to campus to a face-to-face environment.
That's really excellent.
One thing I'll
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Dawn co-chairs our academic year task force along with our provost. And the original direction from our president was to make health and safety for our staff, faculty, and students a priority. So that's been an overriding concern for all of us, that we be able to do this given the small size, relatively small size of our campus. We were talking this morning, we don't have a lot of spaces on campus for our commuter students to, say, lay their hats between classes. So having that density of students on campus along with the residence hall students may not be the safest approach to reopening our campus at this time.
Perfect. That's excellent. I have a quickie for you, Art, I think, and it's around cleaning computer labs with multi-user computer stations.
Yeah, that we actually have that in our plan. That is another area where we hope to be able to provide wipes. I think the plan calls for removal of keyboards and mouse at computers in order to establish proper social distancing, and providing wipes for people to be able to wipe down the keyboard and mouse that remains at the station that they be following behind someone else.
Perfect. And it's interesting that someone had made a statement about how they were handling, I think you had said some of the water fountains, you weren't sure what you were going to do about where you didn't have bottle filler stations. And this individual just said that they're going to provide signage to direct folks where those are available. I thought that was a nice add, and maybe an answer back to something you were dealing with. So I thought that was really super that the individual provided that. So that was good, right?
Can you ask him if I can borrow that idea?
Yeah, yes, you can have that idea. It's M. Lopez, and we can make sure that we get the actual signs that people are using, because we've all been sharing those. We can share them on our website. And I know, Art, I send you stuff all the time, and I will make sure that I send you those things that you are looking for as well. You've been so gracious to provide, you and Dawn both, to provide so much of your time and give us now a really nice perspective on how your institution, because we've had 3 very different institutions on this institutional duo call, town hall, and we thought it was important to do it this way. And so I think what I'll do, if it's okay with you, Dawn and Art, I will go to a close. So in conclusion, we have continue to send us your reopening guidelines, documents for posting. You just heard why. Art just told you he needs them, and people need them out there. So the more that you do that, the better off all your colleagues are. We have a standing call for images on COVID-19 engagement. We'd love to get your images on the website. And there's a slide for that. There's also a slide of our available resources, which I think will be super helpful. And the note, the save the date for next week's topic and who will be presenting is on a corresponding slide, and that's about transportation and traversing to, from, and within the campus. So I'll close with these remarks. Let's keep talking. Let's keep asking. Let's keep listening. Let's keep learning. Did you note Spelman's motto? A choice to change the world. Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So if you didn't think your job was important, well, you are in the business of changing the world. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. Go Juneteenth. We noted that earlier. And thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this. We will see you next Friday. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Wonderful.